You're listening to Speaking Of by WFSU Public Media. Writers and musicians have long had a dynamic relationship. Some authors write with a melodic rhythm, and some musicians are considered lyricists. Word of South Festival celebrates and explores the relationship between music and literature. Gina Jordan is talking with authors Shonda Knight and Kristen Arnett, as well as Florida journalist Craig Pittman about this year's festival.
Hi, I'm Gina Jordan, a host at WFSU Public Media. Today, we are speaking of Word of South. A host of musicians will take the stage, including Tallahassee's own George Clinton. Plus another well-known Tallahassee performer, Del Suggs, and groups like the Black Opry Review and Bad Dog Mama.
Over the 11 years now we've been doing this, we try and pair authors and musicians in different ways.
It's time for the annual Festival of Music and Literature, created over a decade ago by Tallahassee attorney and author Mark Muschin.
It's gratifying to me that every year people say, well, we come up from Cocoa for this. There's nothing like this anywhere. And really, if you Google Book and Music Festival, there's not much nationwide. I mean, really nothing. So we'd like to continue to do our niche. We feature authors who play music. We feature memoirs by musicians that they don't have any other place to go to do something like that.
The festival runs Friday through Sunday. It kicks off with an interesting concert collaboration. The Violent Femmes is an American folk rock punk band. It's been over 40 years since the group's self-titled debut album that featured alternative hits like Blister in the Sun, Gone Daddy Gone, and Add It Up. The Violent Femmes will take the Adderley Amphitheater stage for a sold-out concert Friday night with the Tallahassee Symphony Orchestra. This combo is in keeping with the Word of South Festival's often unique pairings. Many artists will be on various stages set up in Cascades Park and other locations around Tallahassee for a full weekend of entertainment, most of it free. Former Tallahassee TV news anchor Shonda Knight will be among those artists. We spoke via Zoom.
My day job is Executive Director of Community and Media Relations for the Leon County Sheriff's Office.
So we know you from your days as a TV news anchor, and you're also a distinguished alum at Florida A&M University. Were you a J-School grad?
I was.
Nice.
Absolutely.
So you had a couple of decades or so in TV news. And now you're with the Leon County Sheriff's Office, and you're also a mom. And that role helped inspire the book you wrote that you'll be talking about at Word of South.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Sure. So first of all, being a children's book author was never on the goals list. It happened organically. So my daughter was getting ready to go to the father-daughter dance last February, and she wanted me to straighten her hair for the dance. And the weather that day was just not conducive for hair of our texture to be straight. And so I told her that that wasn't an option because it wouldn't stay straight. It was just going to get puffy. And she felt defeated because she wanted her straight, flowy hair because many of her friends have straight, flowy hair. And so I took it as an opportunity to really pour into her. And I just started telling her why her hair was so special. And I just told her that, here's what's so great about your hair is that it can do so many different things. It can be curly one day, it can be straight the next, you can braid it, you can lock it. It's so versatile. And I could just see, as I started telling her about it, her disposition changed into one of pride. And so, God just laid it on my heart that this was a message we needed to spread more widely. And that's the concept. I knew from the onset that I wanted to do a book geared toward the younger audience. And when I say younger, I mean 0 to 8 years old. My daughter is 10 now. She was 9 at the time. And there are books that address this topic, but I didn't see anything in that toddler space, which is when, 90% of brain development happens between 0 and 5, and self-confidence is starting to be built. So it's why I decided to do an interactive board book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us the title of the book and what we can expect when we go to look for it.
Sure. So the book is called My Omni Locks, Hair with Endless Looks. Omni meaning, can do all things. and locks being hair. So it's called My Omni Locks. The book is, as I said, an interactive board book. So I didn't even know what they were called. I just knew I wanted one of those big cardboard books.
Yeah, yeah.
Cutouts. I knew the concept from the beginning would be that there would be a face. And as you turn the pages, the hairstyle would change on that same face on the back cover. And so
Oh,
that's the concept. I knew nothing about writing a book, but learned very early on that with board books, you pretty much have to self-publish because, you know, the profit margin isn't that high. And so I just kind of watched lots of YouTube videos, self-published and printed. And here we are. You know, I launched pre-sales in June and actual book sales in August.
nice. And so how do people find the book?
So the book is available on our website, which is myomnilocks.com. We are in the process of doing a book tour sponsored by McDonald's, which was a huge surprise when they reached out to me wanting to sponsor a book tour. So
Oh,
we've partnered with McDonald's. Our next stop will be Jacksonville on May 3rd at a McDonald's restaurant. So McDonald's is buying books to do a book giveaway and a book signing. So I'm just grateful for this journey.
wow, that's big.
Yeah, it
That's
really
excellent.
is. Yeah,
Yeah. So you'll be talking about the book at Word of South.
I will.
What can we expect from your appearance there?
So, you know, word of South, of course, is a staple in our community when it comes to artists being able to really, you know, showcase their craft. So I'm excited to be there for the first time in this capacity. I'm going to share our story, my daughter and my story of why we wrote this book and why it's an important message for especially little brown girls who, you know, hair could be a cumbersome thing for sometimes, depending on texture. Luckily, my daughter's hair isn't very coarse, but for some little girls, it can be very painful. And so we want them to love who they are. And it's been a real joy sharing this book with so many children throughout our community and beyond, and really teaching them that who you are should be celebrated.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
impressive.
Thank
So now that
you.
you're a published author, can we expect more books from you?
I've been asked that question, and actually, the question I get asked the most: "What are you going to do for the boys?"
Yeah.
Because you know this is geared towards girls, but we are thinking about what's next. We are working on some more elements as it relates to my Omni locks. We've got T-shirts and keychains and tote bags, and so we're really looking at how do we keep this message alive, and most importantly, how do we keep youth engaged?
Yeah. How long is this tour going to be?
So we are still in the process of figuring that out. Again, we're headed to Jacksonville and then we're headed to Gainesville. McDonald's is in the process of working with their restaurants to see which restaurants are most conducive to the environment. They love the ones with play centers. Unfortunately, we don't have one with a play center in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
So for Tallahassee, we visited Title I schools, which was a great opportunity. So it's in motion, and we're just grateful for the journey.
Wow, that sounds fun. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about your book or your foray into writing?
You know, I've been a journalist, you know, really my entire career. So writing was nothing new. This is a rhyming board book. You know, I'm a very purpose-driven person, and I believe that I'm guided by a higher power. And so I woke up in the middle of the night the day after that conversation and just had all the words to it. It's a 12-page, very easy read. You know, I tell people it's not just for brown girls, it's for anybody who wants to embrace the experience of brown girls. So the book is for everybody. And I've been so pleasantly surprised and, well, I shouldn't say surprised, but honored by the reception we've received from the little kids who love the book. So it's been a wonderful journey.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, you wear a lot of hats, and your latest is author, and we'll see you at Word of South this weekend. Shonda Knight, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Gina.
Also coming for Word of South is author Kristen Arnett. We spoke via Zoom.
I would describe my work as kind of like a Florida lesbian domestic, weird Florida, strange occupations. And this book that I've had just come out is a lesbian birthday party clown book. You know, that classic story.
It's a classic already. I love it.
Yeah.
And what's the name of that book?
The book is called Stop Me If You've Heard This One.
So this is your latest book.
It is. It came out on March 18th. So it's still pretty new, still pretty fresh.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
So you're an FSU grad living in Orlando.
Yes, I have my master's in library and information science from Florida State.
Great. So your work has appeared in pretty much every major newspaper and media outlet, it seems. And you have this new novel. Tell us more about this incredibly interesting sounding novel.
Yeah, so I was very interested in writing a book very specifically about a clown, which I know it's like one of those things where you say that word and like the way that clown exists in popular culture, you get kind of a few different looks from people when you say it's a book about a clown. But I really specifically wanted to write a book that was very much about the idea of humor, the idea of like the philosophy of how to be funny. And so this is a very voicey first person book about a woman named Cherry Hendricks who lives in Orlando and is kind of like trying to take her artistry, which is clowning, to the next level. So she, is kind of bumbling through life in this messy kind of way, but at the same time trying to be like, I'm trying to make art in a kind of like capitalist society, and like let's see if I can have this, while trying to also hold down a job and pay rent.
Yes, alas, the
Yeah.
thing we all have to worry about.
Yes.
So let's talk about your specialty. When people ask you, what do you write about, or what is your focus or your genre, what would you say?
I say usually I write about gay Florida, specifically gay Central Florida. I consider myself very much to be a place writer. Like any of my work has like Florida is very steeped in it, like a very strong tea, maybe. But I am always very interested in writing about Central Florida in the ways that I think people don't necessarily see. Like, I think we have a lot of outsiders who live outside of Florida who have a lot of opinions about Florida. So it's usually a space for me to be like, well, here's a different way of like picking up this space and looking at it that maybe, if your brain's already thinking theme parks, if your brain is already thinking Florida man, if your brain is already thinking the government that we have in Florida, then here's like a little look, like a little magnifying glass on a place of Florida that maybe somebody who's not from here gets to like take a peek inside of. I'm also just very interested in like messy women. So I think I write a lot of like characters who are just trying to figure stuff out, like many of us are. But it's always very Florida heavy for sure.
So you're a Florida native.
Yes, I'm third generation Central Florida.
Very cool. All right, so you've been invited to appear at Word of South. Tell us about what we can expect from your appearance.
I am so excited. First of all, I love Word of South. This will be my second time appearing. I had a great time the first time I was there. I love the idea of like different kinds of art being celebrated like simultaneously. Usually I feel like things are siloed off in different directions, but I love the idea of like music and like the written word coming together. I think that's gorgeous. I am so grateful to be able to be talking with my very good friend, fellow writer Jamie Attenberg, who also had a book come out this last year called A Reason to See You Again. And we're going to be talking with each other. We're both going to read, and then we're both going to be talking about the idea of women sitting inside of fiction, but also like families sitting inside of fiction, right? Like what's chosen family. And Jamie writes so beautifully about place. So her book has a lot of different places inside of it, and mine's very deeply Florida. So I think people can expect to hear a lot about like what it's like to be a person and moving through the world, and what it's like to be a person and like kind of stay in one place. But also we just like love each other so much. So it's definitely just going to be also two friends just having a really good time talking to each other, I think.
Oh, nice. It'll be fun. Okay, is there anything else you'd like us to know about your work or about your appearance this weekend?
Yes. So I hope that people will go into this book being like, this is something where I hope people get a laugh out of it. It's something I purposely wrote to be kind of like a joy, like a joyful experience for the reader, or at least a little bit of fun. So I hope that in a time where people are reasonably stressed out and feel scared and nervous, that this could be like a bright spot for them to have a moment of enjoyment and levity. Also, anybody who's coming to, please come up and talk to me. I'm such a people person, and I really want to chat with you about anything. It doesn't even have to be the book. Like I'm excited. I'm excited to see people.
Oh, that's fun. Author Kristen Arnett, we wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm joined now by Craig Pittman. You're a podcaster, a best-selling author, an award-winning journalist, among other things.
That's me. And a Florida native. So if we get interrupted by a biologist coming in to tag me, that's why.
Oh,
I'm an
not
endangered
you.
species.
Well, you are because you have been a reporter. You were a newspaper reporter for 4 decades?
Yes, most of it at the Tampa Bay Times, and about 20 years of it covering environment, which I contend is the greatest beat in American journalism. And not just because they have to pay you to go out and ride around on a boat now and again.
What a great gig.
It is. I got to write about pythons battling alligators in the Everglades and a religious cult that smuggled giant African land snails in because they thought drinking the mucus would make you healthy. It actually had the opposite effect.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Are we talking about those things that eat the siding of a house?
Yes, yeah, they're huge. They're as big as your hand, and they'll eat the stucco siding off your house, and they're hermaphroditic, so there's nothing holding them back from breeding prolifically. And the state actually had to train dogs to sniff out the snail mucus so they could eradicate them. Which
That's so
I feel bad for the dogs. I figure they go back to the kennel at night, and the other dogs are bragging about, hey, I sniffed out some bombs today. Well, I sniffed out some drugs. How about you? I sniffed out some snail mucus. It's a living,
gross. That's disgusting. How are we doing on that, by the way? Are the snails mostly gone?
They eradicated them from the Miami area and were celebrating, and then short time later they popped up in Pasco County. Then now they popped up, I think, in Broward as well. So,
Ay. All things wind up in Pasco, I think, at some point.
Yes, I'm convinced that Pasco is, of all the weirdness in Florida, they are ground zero.
Yeah, nudists, sinkholes, snail mucus. Gross. All right. Well, you are going to be appearing at the Word of South. And I know you have a new book out as well. So you'll be talking about your new book?
Yes, it's called Welcome to Florida, True Tales from America's Most Interesting State. And it's a collection of pieces in there. If you're new to Florida, and every day we get 900 new people who move here and don't know what they've gotten themselves into, grab this book and it'll teach you some stuff you probably don't know. There are stories in here about the citrus industry, the cattle industry, both of which were started by the Spanish when they were here in the 1500s. Pieces about alligators and stories about people who have found their particular slice of Florida and fallen in love with it and then had to fight for it. One of those pieces is about a community founded by formerly enslaved people after the Civil War, and DOT wants to build a highway through it, and they have to all band together to try and fight this off. There's another quirkier piece about a community called Jumbo Lair that used to be an elephant sanctuary, hence the Jumbo part of the name, and now is a town for people who like to fly their airplanes right up to the driveway of their house. And somebody came in and wanted to expand the place and add a lot more homes and let people who don't live there start using the airstrip, and they had to band together to fight that off.
Is that near Ocala?
Yes. The guy who was pushing this, when he encountered opposition, he would take his helicopter and fly over people's homes and scare their cattle and their horses. So he was not well liked among the neighbors.
I can imagine. And you also wrote a great book, Oh, Florida, How America's Weirdest State Influences the Rest of the Country. You just know all kinds of quirky things about Florida.
The point of that book is, yes, we are weird, but we are also more than that. And if you just think we're weird, you're making a big mistake. It's still selling today. I'm still getting royalty checks from that one, that's a nice thing to open your mailbox to.
Well, yeah, it's worthy for sure. Can you talk about, either from that book or from your latest book, one or two things that perhaps will come up during your Word of South appearance?
You mentioned about the nudist resorts in Pasco County. Florida has more nudist resorts than any other state. We have such mild weather when it's not hurricane season. In the new book, there's actually a piece about how the nudist resorts coped with the pandemic, because for once they had to wear something. They had to wear masks on their faces.
Oh, and that's the only place they had to wear a mask.
Yes. In the other book, in Oh, Florida, I mentioned that in the run-up to one of our hurricanes, my newspaper assignment was to call around to various places and ask, are you accepting evacuees? And I called up one of the very fashionable nudist resorts, Caliente, in Pasco County, and said, are you accepting hurricane evacuees? And they said yes, and the good news is you don't have to pack any clothes.
Oh, I'm just curious what makes it fashionable because,
It's upscale. Let's put it that way.
Okay,
But yeah, that's a fair question, because how do you tell it's fashionable when nobody's wearing anything?
I love it. Well, that was very generous of them.
Yes.
So, Craig, you're still working, and it's not like you've gone out to
Yes.
sea. You're writing for the Florida Phoenix. You have a weekly column on environmental issues, and you co-host the Welcome to Florida podcast.
Yes, I love doing the podcast. I was nervous about doing it at first, and then somebody explained it's just radio on the internet. So we've been doing it for 4 years, and we always say we always have fun, and sometimes we have sponsors.
Oh, nice. Well, that's always helpful. So tell us a little bit about what will be happening at the Word of South. You'll be appearing with some other folks on stage.
Yeah, the unique thing about Word of South is that it emphasizes both music and literature, which I think is a great idea. I don't know why more festivals don't do this, but I'm with a musician, the leader of a group called Frozen Turkeys, which I think is just a great name, and a woman she's actually from Tallahassee originally, but she now runs a bookstore in Georgia and has written a book about that and about the pandemic and about sort of how do you prosper while staying in place. Fortunately, the musician has written a song about Florida Man, so I think that'll get us kicked off right.
Oh, that's perfect. So that's musician Frank Douglas and author Annie B. Jones. Craig, what else would you like us to know about as far as the work you're doing, as far as your appearance at Word of South? Anything else you want us to know?
The book that I really cared the most about, which is the Cattail, was about how the Florida panther was saved from oblivion. And there's a sort of a sequel to that in this new book, Welcome to Florida. There's a new cattail in there about a panther that was hit by a car and just would not die. And the politically connected rancher who tried to have it killed. And to me, it's an absolutely fascinating story. It's one of those with a lot of twists and turns. My favorite story in here, though, is the very first one, which is about a developer who sounds like someone Carl Hyacin invented. He actually would wear alligator shoes with alligator eyes.
Ew.
Yeah. Interesting guy.
Does the panther story have a happy ending?
It does. Like Cattail, my book on the Panthers, which I wouldn't say had a happy ending, but it had a hopeful ending. Let's just leave it at that and encourage people to buy the book and see for themselves what happened.
Absolutely. Craig Pittman, podcaster, best-selling author, award-winning journalist, will be at Word of South on Sunday, and we look forward to seeing you, Craig. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It'll be a busy weekend at the Word of South Festival. We have more information at WFSU.org. I'm Gina Jordan.